Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Hitting the Table. This is where I talk about all of the board games that I have played over the last couple of weeks. This episode covering the second half of February 2024. And before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But we're going to start with probably the main feature of the last couple of weeks for me, which is getting Hamburg back to the table. Now, Hamburg, if you're not aware, is a reprint of the classic Steffenfeld game Bruges, but this one is part of the Steffenfeld City Collection from Queen Games. But this one is kind of widely regarded to be a bit of an anomaly when it comes to Feld designs, because normally Feld games are kind of these clockwork, mechanical style games. This one is that, but it is more card driven, and it's about building this kind of optimal tableau of cards, using the cards in a multitude of ways. So talking about multi-use cards, this is probably up there with the best of the best, top 3 multi-use card game for sure. Loads to do here, not enough time to do it. Now, this most recent game was very enjoyable, and we all went very different routes. One of my opponents really focused on that tableau of cards, building that engine. I focused on building this wall more than anything else, and it was good. Now, the only kind of reservation I have about this is that I think that if you hit or strike that perfect combo early in the game, it can be quite difficult to make the ground up, and you can be kind of fighting a losing battle from the get-go if the cards don't work for you. Now, I'm not saying that's an objective criticism or a negative on the game. It's just something you need to be prepared for. It's not as you don't have quite the autonomy as you do with a lot of other Steffenfeld games. There's a lot of different touches here that I think are genius. I mean, I especially love this mechanism where on your player board you have these kind of different little milestones. And if at a certain point in the game you are ahead on one of those milestones, then you will unlock some points. And just because you are, let's say, have the most points at a certain time, you can even fall back later. But as long as you were there at one point in the game, you will have those points in your reserve. So I love the way that works, and I think that should be a mechanism explored some more. Now, I have recently played this with I did acquire the language-dependent cards, which, have the English language on them, as opposed to the basic cards that come in the game, which are these just purely rely on symbology. And I have to say, those English language cards are a complete essential for me. I think without those, the game is almost unplayable because you have to keep on referencing the rulebook. But if you are interested in this game, I'd highly recommend you pick up those cards as well, because they do make it so much easier to play. So that is Hamburg. On to some smaller games now then. So we actually got a 4-player game of Chubra Yakwa played. Now, this one, I recently covered it on a ranking video, and I had my reservations about it. I was kind of struggling to see where the game was, but I did say that I thought at higher player counts it would be better, because I initially only played it with 3 players. Now I've played it with 4 players. I can 100% say that is the case. This is so much more enjoyable with just that extra player, and it does even cater to more than that. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. This is a wonderfully elegant little game, as all you're doing is you are trying to have the highest value card in front of you. But if you have the lowest value card, then your card gets added with a card in the centre of the table. And all you do on your turn is you can add a new card to your hand, or you can replace the card in the centre of the table. And then you kind of wager on yourself and whether you have the confidence if you have the highest card or not. I'm surprised how much I enjoyed this one. It could have been one that I was initially wrong on, saying that it wasn't a strong game, but I actually think this one has some merit to it, and I think it's got potential. Actually, I think it's very enjoyable. Yes, it is as light as it gets, but it does have that little spark of magic that's hard to put your finger on, and I enjoyed it much more this second time. We played a game of Roll to the Top. So this is a simple dice rolling game. You're simply trying to choose which dice you want to have in the pool, and then you're writing numbers, trying to have matching numbers or higher numbers as you climb up this this tower essentially. And there's tons of different maps here of different kind of wonders of the world, etc. A true filler, you know, you really can kind of switch off your brain, but you are trying to optimally place those dice to tick the boxes off as quickly as you can, because it is a race to the finish style game. We played another 3-player game of Empire's End. So a game that I spoke quite highly of in a recent ranking video. I love this no thanks style mechanism, as you are bidding not to take these punishment. And in this game, the punishment for basically taking these negative cards is that you're going to burn your buildings, and these buildings essentially contribute to your engine that will gain you resources, points, etc. It's, again, I love that no thanks mechanism, and I like the fact that in this one you have different types of currencies that you can pass with. You know, you have the food, you have the tools, and you have the weaponry as well. And in this one, it's all about knowing when to take the hit. And I think in this most recent game, I managed to weather the storm quite well, because I thought, you know, let's get the hits done early, let's accrue some resources, and then use those to get rid of to bypass the horrible threats later in the game. And fortunately, that worked out for me. And I did actually quite well, very high score. And it was actually an absolute joy to play. I think this game is fantastic. Now, my only issue with the game is that it does go on too long. It is about 30% too long, in my opinion. But it's still an enjoyable process. And yeah, there's certainly cool things here as you're increasing your engine, you know, your little tableau by boosting your little buildings and stuff. And I will probably do a designated review of this one soon. But yeah, a few plays under the belt now, and it's still holding up really well, because I do love that central mechanism so much. A couple of card games now, the first of which being Gap. I played a 2-player game of Gap, another game I have reviewed recently. This one, you are trying to use cards in your hand to acquire other cards, but the scoring mechanism is very cool, because it's going to be your highest suit of cards, or multiple suits of cards, minus your lowest suits of cards. And I played the best of 2 rounds this time. The first round I did okay, I think I got like 4 points or so. My opponent got nothing, or maybe even negative points. In the second round, I think I only got like 2 points or so, but my opponent got like 10 points or something. So it was quite cool how they came out of that deficit and ended up winning the game. But again, I talked really highly about these are the kind of card games I like to have in my collection. They're so playable, enjoyable, but still have some relatively interesting decisions. Another game, a bit like Roll to the Top in terms of being a pure filler game, switch off your brain and enjoy. This is Trigs. This is kind of one of the old school style roll and write style games, but you're not actually rolling dice in this one. You are managing a hand of cards to tick off numbers on your number sheet. Once you finish a certain row of numbers, you can get a bonus cross off, and it can give you combos and stuff. A nice little game. Next to no decision space, to be honest. I'm not sure if this will hold up long term, but I do enjoy it as, again, a pure filler to end a game stage, just to fill in that last 15 minutes or so. Onto a more crunchy card game now. We played a 2-player game of Wizards of the Grimoire. Now, I'm quite fortunate that I do have the Shifting Sands expansion for this one, so I've got a ton of cards now for this very interesting 2-player only dueling game. Tons of synergies, tons of combos, and this was quite an interesting little game arc that we had, because my opponent came out the gates very strong, was hitting me with some very devastating spells, and I managed to find the chinks in their armor and ended up kind of counteracting that, and had enough time to overthrow it and ended up winning the game. Just by, again, you've got to always find and exploit the weaknesses in your opponent's tableau in this game, and I like the way that works. Tons of options here, and I'm always finding new combinations and stuff. I think one of the saving graces for me here was that my opponent had so many options to draw magic cards, and you can do like a basic attack with those magic cards that can hit you quite heavily over the course of time. But I had a spell that I always had activated where they had to cash in double the amount of those cards in order to hit me, so it really did limit their options to do that. So I really like that particular spell. But Wizards of the Grimoire always impresses me by finding those new combos. I played a 4-player game of Raise, getting quite a bit of buzz on my channel at the moment. True hidden gem here. This one is like a betting and bluffing style game. And this one, most recent game was quite interesting because we're playing with 4 players, which I haven't played with 4 players before this time, and it does make it a lot more interesting. And it's always cool when people go all in on a certain round, and of course 3 of those 4 people are going to get hit quite hard, because in this game, the more you bet on yourself, the more points you can give to your opponent if they win. So again, it does have that push your luck aspect to it. I have recorded my review of this game, so I will get that uploaded very shortly, I promise. Another game we got back to the table is Hookie. Played a 3-player game of this kind of deduction style word game. It has the kind of elements of the popular game Wordle, as you are trying to work out your letter, or the letters that your opponents have in front of them, and they'll tell you how many letters in that arrangement, or that word that they have, and of course you are deducing more and more information the more words you guess. The combos you can get here are very cool. There's one nugget of information can cascade into a bunch of other information. And during my initial thoughts on this game, which I shared in a recent ranking video, I had my reservations as the scoring system seemed a little bit wonky, because you would get very few points for actually working out the letters, but a ton of points by working out, or even mostly guessing, the missing letters. While that is still the case, I think now that I went into the subsequent games knowing that, and kind of knowing how the points are distributed, it didn't hit me so hard, or it didn't catch me off guard, and I enjoyed it much more this second time. So again, I think I could have been wrong on this one. I think this one, well, I did say in my review, this one could have gone up in my estimations, and it has certainly done that. I think this is a very enjoyable experience, and I think maybe experience being one of the key words, because I'm not going to get too caught up in the scoring of a game like this because of that, just throw caution to the wind and guess a letter and potentially win, potentially lose based on that. But the actual deduction itself is highly enjoyable. So that is Hookie. Last few games now. So we played a 4-player game of Alia. This one was a bit of a train wreck, because I think the arrangement of cards weren't terribly interesting in terms of the scoring. And also we messed up the scoring in the first place, because we got 2 players' scoring markers confused. But the game is very nice. I love these kind of overlaying style games, as you're cross-hatching these cards over each other and trying to score these variable objectives. And it has a bit of drafting as well. And I think for a hybrid of mechanisms, Nemalia does a great job of putting so much into a 20-minute game. So I think it's a very impressive design, and it did make my top 10, or at least my preliminary list of 2023 games. Back to a classic now. We played a 4-player game of For Sale, and what a stark reminder as to why this is one of the best games ever designed. I generally like auction games anyway, and I've played dozens of auction games. This one is still up there with the best of the best. That dual system, the first half of the game spending your currency to acquire the properties, the second half of the game using those properties to acquire the actual checks and the points in terms of that money. I love the little wrinkles of this game, when to pass and give opportunities to your opponent, know when to just throw in that extra 1,000 or extra coin or 2. I love the delicacy on which you have to balance your bids here, because it does make or break the game, and just the arrangement of these cards coming out each time just drastically changes the tactical nature of this. To be honest, a genius design. I think this is as good as game design gets, and if you've not played this game, don't be thrown off by maybe the childish nature or the design of it. The actual game design here, the mechanical nuances of this game is just off the charts. And this most recent game just was a testament to that. It's been quite a while since I played this one. And it was really nice to get a 4-player game of it played. I think it does kind of peak at 4 or 5 players. I think maybe 4 players is the sweet spot for me personally. So it was nice to play it at that optimal player count. Just dropped a game there. And the last game of mine that I played was The Wandering Towers. So I played a 4-player game of this recent Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling co-design. A kind of a throwback style game as you're moving around this rondel track, I suppose, trying to deposit your wizards into the kind of Raven Keep here. You play these cards from your hand, which will either move the towers or move your wizards. But when you move the towers, you can move kind of any level of the towers, and they do stack on each other in almost like a camel up style mechanism. You also get points. Oh, sorry, you get these potions charged up when you trap other people, and you can never look inside those towers. So you do have to remember where everything is, and that's always funny when you forget where your wizards are and you're trying to find that last one to deposit into the tower. Got a little bit caught off guard with this one, as one of my opponents played very well, and I managed to get their wizards in and their potions charged up pretty quickly, at least way ahead of everybody else. But yeah, it's a very enjoyable game. It has a certain charm to it, and it feels somewhat timeless. Now, I'm not sure if it's a little bit too light for me. While I completely see its merit, I'm not sure if I'll keep on coming back to this one, because it is so simple, and again, it almost feels like a child's game, but it is a good one at that. So that is The Wandering Towers. The last two games I'm going to talk about now are ones that belong to my friend, the first of which being Ethnos. Ethnos is a kind of a hand management, area control style game, and you're collecting sets of these cards, trying to play them and then claim control of different regions. But whenever you play certain suits of cards, you'll get bonuses based on that kind of unique fantasy race. Like, for example, you've got these halflings that will boost or bolster the other suits you're playing, because there's tons of them in the deck. Or you've got these kind of mermen that let you climb up this separate track and let you put extra deployments on the board. Or these dwarves which will score you more points. And it's all about trying to collect those sets and spam them onto the board. But whenever you play a set, you will have to give up the remaining ones in your hand to the basically to the table, because they'll go back out on the display and start getting drafted by the other players. A great back and forth here, very fast, snappy turns. And it does feel like a well-defined, polished game that I do enjoy quite a lot, actually. And it's got some good variability, as you can chop and change those different races. This particular game was interesting because, it has my favourite card in it, which is the orcs, which is where you are trying to play different colours of the orcs, and you get points based on set collection at the end of all those different colours that you've played. I managed to get quite a few of those played, which managed to swing the game in my favour. But it's an enjoyable game, actually. I can't really deny that, and I can see why this one has held up quite well. And the second one is Azul. So Azul is a game that I've had a rocky relationship with. When I first played it, I remember being distinctly underwhelmed by it because it had so much buzz, and I was again not impressed with the way it worked. I thought it was a bit too abstract for me. I thought the decisions were often out of your hands, and it could almost be punishing at times as well. For some reason, I requested to play this one because I thought, let's give it another go. I generally like Michael Kiesling games. In fact, 9 out of 10 times I do. And this most recent play I did enjoy a lot more. I kind of started to see how the different moving parts started to click together, and went into it with the mindset of it being a gateway style game. So yeah, it's quite nice to get this one back to the table, and it's definitely gone up in my estimation. So that is Azul. So that's it. That's all of the games I have been playing in the last half of February 2024. Hopefully something on here has caught your eye. And again, I will be releasing content on most of these games I already have done. So please be sure to always keep an eye out on the feed to see what is coming up. But if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.